Good evening. Hi. I have not met a couple of you in person before, so it's really lovely to see you here. I think I've heard of you, and I'm excited to get to know you. Welcome to CityLearn May. Our May session was rescheduled, and it just so happens to align with Public Works Appreciation Week, which is happening right now. We're here to talk about capital projects, and capital projects could only be done with our fantastic Public Works team's incredible efforts to get things over the finish line. So CityLearn happens every month. We've got folks who are joining us online, so hello to our Zoom audience. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here in person. We're going to be able to wrap up in time to enjoy some of the sunshine, I think, because we're getting close to the solstice now. By way of introduction, my name's Mallory. I am the Community Opportunities Coordinator here at the City of Shoreline. And I am so pleased to pass things over to Councilmember Robertson. Councilmember Robertson's going to brief us with a little bit of background on her and interest in serving our city as a council member. And that's kind of our go-to with CityLearn, is we want an opportunity for folks that come in person and online to hear directly from our elected representative of our city council and to ask them a couple questions, perhaps, if Betsy feels inclined. So, Councilmember Robertson, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Well, hello to this very intimate gathering of Shoreline enthusiasts and to those online. I feel like I'm talking and introducing myself to people who already know me. So this might be short, but I guess I'll do a quick recap on just who I am and why I am in public service. And it started in 2013 as I was, a resident of Shoreline, a new mom holding an, almost 2-year-old, and Currents magazine or newspaper showed up on my mailbox, and I saw on the front page that they were looking for people to apply to the Parks Board. And there was just something in my brain that clicked that said, I think I'd like to do that. So I applied and got to join the Parks Board, and that kicked off a 6-year journey of getting to know the city and the Parks Department and how the different operations work together, and to learn how to work with community members and receive public comment. And I remember my very, very first meeting, had a lovely dinner at home and probably a glass of wine. And then I showed up at council and I was seated at the dais, which I was, as a Parks Board member. And there was a long line of people lined up to express their frustration over the placement of porta potties at Sunset School Park. And my eyes were just like saucers. What did I sign up for? And pointing at me and saying, you have no idea what you're doing. I'm like, bro, I just got here. I don't know the first thing about those porta potties. But later that week, I went and toured and got a sense of what was going on out there, and here we go. So after a number of years and serving as the Parks Board chair, I remember a vocal community member who I thought hated me, because they were always, just hated me, and plopped down next to me on a bus for one of our parks tours and said, "So when are you going to run for council?" And I went, "What?" Really? We're going to have, okay. So it kind of, it planted a seed. And next thing I know, one of the council members, Councilmember Solomon, was running for election and got chosen to serve on the state Senate. And there was a vacancy. And so, I guess I bring this up because I know there are folks out there who are in our community, maybe they're serving on our boards and commissions, and maybe they're kind of dabbling with the idea of maybe, but it's intimidating, the idea of running for office. It's really, really intimidating. And even though I kind of knew it's something that I wanted to do, I didn't want all the work that came along with it. So what opened up in that moment was an opportunity to be, and to apply to be appointed to the empty seat, the then vacant seat, which, I don't know, was this better or worse than running for office? I was one of over 50 people from the community who applied, 6 who were chosen to sit in front of a council and have a public interview. So you're interviewing for a job in public, and that was wild. Councilmember Pobey was another one at the time, another finalist. So I like to say I snuck in. I kind of snuck into council, went through that process, and then I got to experience 10 months as an appointee, and then run kind of as an incumbent at that point. So that all went down in 2019, and here we are. I'm in my second term in office with about 2.5 years left of my term, and it's been a roller coaster, up and down and all over the place. And coming from the Parks Board, I was very motivated to continue that work, right? And that was really the one area where I felt comfortable and confident speaking my mind and sharing my opinion on things. The rest came with a lot of studying, a lot of learning about different departments and how they work, and prioritization processes. But Parks was my jam, and it took the same year that I was on the ballot was the first time we tried to pass the most recent Parks bond, which just didn't go through, right? And we know the story there. But I've learned a lot, and I'm so proud to have been part of the group of not just council members and city staff and community members who were committed to making parks and this investment in our parks a reality, that we kept at it. And we got that passed in 21, anyway, much later. And now we're already realizing the benefits from that vote, that investment. It's so cool to see the different parks that are opening up and know that the construction is starting on many more, and that this resource. And I'll go back to just being a citizen in Shoreline, even before I bought my house here, living with my dad, and the time the first Parks Bond passed, and looking at this map and all this green space and thinking, wow, what a cool city that has this much parkland. And now if we look at the map again, it's even bigger and it's greater, and we're continuing to go down that path, and create backyards for people who are living in all of these multi-unit family houses that are now being constructed here, and creating space for community building. And that's where I'd kind of like turn to now, just in my sharing, that at some point in the last year or so, and it's fitting because you're going to be talking about capital projects later tonight, as I sit back and I see that, okay, there's still a lot more to do, but we've done some sidewalks, we've done the zoning, the buildings are coming, we've kind of built it out, and even now we're about midway through having all those parks built out as well. Okay, now we've made all this investment in stuff and places and hard materials. What are we doing to actually get people out of their homes and rubbing shoulders and creating community with each other? So that has become my personal focus, and my kind of new, I say it's like kind of a new direction, because it started with an idea to just put some kind of winter light display out here at the park at Town Center. And I got some feedback from the community that even kind of surprised me. Like, I just kind of tossed it out as an idea at a council meeting, and the feedback that I got from people was like, we like that. We like that idea. Let's do that. And then the chamber got involved, and other people got involved, and I realized, okay, well, there are a lot of different perspectives represented on our council. People coming from different backgrounds. They've got their own maybe special area that they want to focus on. And I realized in that moment that really nobody was doing economic development. Nobody on the council, I should say, specifically, was kind of focused on economic development, community placemaking, that sort of thing. And I felt like that was a space that I was passionate about and could step into. So that's how the light thing happened. I'm really excited that that's going to be a reality. So the next time, we're about to hit the summer solstice, when we're on the backside of the year and it's dark again and it's damp and all those things, we're going to have this beacon drawing us out of our homes hopefully, into community with each other, hopefully bringing people from even outside our community into Shoreline to just fuel some of that economic activity that I think we need. And so anyway, that's really exciting for me. Some of those conversations kind of sparked bigger conversations about the World Cup coming and how we could take advantage of the now electrified space, that's this investment that we've made into electrifying the parks out here, the park at Town Center. Well, what's left? We're not just going to use it to plug in lights, 1 month a year. No, now it's electrified 12 months of the year. And what else can we do with it? How else can we activate it and bring people together for different reasons? So I don't know, that's kind of stuff that I just, I'm delighted to be able to find a niche where I can put my energy and get people excited and maybe tap into some energy and some individuals in our community that haven't maybe been as jazzed about what was on the agenda for council. So just getting people involved, I love, love, love those opportunities. So that's a very quick rundown of how it started and where we are now. Any questions? How was that? Did you time me? It
was perfect.
Anyway, I'm excited about things that are, driving, zigzagging around the town, around the Shoreline. I'm excited about thinking about the light rail stations. I use them mostly for special events. Thankfully, I don't have to commute to work anymore. Thank you for remote work now. Yeah, but I'm so proud to live here. I'm coming up on 20 years as a homeowner in Shoreline. And as I mentioned, I was living with my dad in Shoreline before that. So, I've been here not as long as some, longer than others. Really proud of being a part of this community, this city, and the individuals that I get to work with at City Hall, our city staff, deserve so much more credit than they get. I believe this because council members get to be the face and wave the, cut the ribbons and wave the flags and get their name in the paper, but really it's all being done by staff behind the scenes, and I really appreciate everything you guys do. So thanks. But I guess I opened it for questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Robertson, especially this trajectory of the arc of serving on the Parks Board and service on council. We appreciate you, and you live your values and up at this dais, so thank you. There are youth positions that are currently open on the Parks Board, so if you know anybody over 15 to 19, I think, we are trying to secure some youth voices on our Parks Board, so you can follow in the footsteps of Councilmember Robertson and ultimately become our mayor someday. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass things over to our staff from Public Works who are here. We have Liz Kelly, Leif Johansson, Joe Johansson. Okay, you all are tricking me up because then we have Trisha Junke. So thank you all for being here. I will advance your slides. For folks that are joining on Zoom, we have built in kind of some natural breaks in the presentation. So drop your questions in the chat. We're going to keep them cataloged and we're going to make sure that they're answered. If they're not answered the second you ask them, it's not because we're ignoring you. We just want to make sure that we can get through the content and get to our kind of natural pause in the moment. And same thing kind of goes for folks in the audience. And then for everybody in the audience also, all the people who are here tonight, please wait until you have a microphone in your hand to ask your question. That just makes sure that the online audience and the people who will watch this recording in the future can hear what you have to say. So with that, I will pass things over to you all, and you will let me know when you need screen advanced, and I've got to bring up your slideshow. I turned it off.
Get really close to it.
Give it a try.
Oh, dear. Thank you all for being here. We're going to talk to you all about capital projects. We're going to do some introductions ourselves in a bit. So we're going to talk about kind of from the inception of how capital projects get kind of developed and planned and how they emerge. There's 3 segments to our presentation, with the first one being the planning work. I'll talk some, Trish will talk some, and then we'll see what questions that you have. And then we're going to talk, the second part is focused on what we do once projects begin to shape up and emerge. Leif is going to chat about that. And we'll see what questions you have then. And then part 3 is going to get into a little bit more into examples. The next slide, I would like to introduce, we're going to introduce ourselves. Tavia, you also, we'd like you to introduce yourself. I'll start and then Trish. But I'm very inspired, Betsy, by how you share your passion and how you found yourself in your own place. I also have an absolute passion for public service, which I got from my father, who was an engineer and worked at the state. And I grew up in North Seattle, and then I moved to Shoreline in 1991. And I am now part of the most incredible neighborhood in Shoreline, Ridgecrest. So, yay! And I worked for the city of Seattle for about 21 years in Seattle Public Utilities, learned a lot there, and then I went and worked in the private sector for about 10 years, and I have been here in this role for about 2.5 years now, and I'm thrilled to be here. There's a lot going on, a lot of incredibly wonderful work going on at the city and in public works. And so, Trish, maybe you could introduce yourself, a little bit about your background.
Hi, I'm Tricia Yunke, and I am the Public Works Director here at Shoreline. I have been here in the Shoreline, at the City of Shoreline for 18 years, and then just over 2 years as the Director. But prior to that, I have, my entire career, there's over 30 years of experience in public works. And similar to talking about passions is I really am passionate about the work public works does and how it really does impact the community. And it really is part of that fabric that you can, I love that you can, most of the time, not all projects, you can see the work you've done and you can see the way it influences and impacts the community. And Shoreline is a special, great community to be part of. That's one of the reasons why I've been here as long as I've been here. It is a special community, it's a supportive community, and we do some really cool things that I know impact and make a difference on this community. So it is a great, fun place to be. And I guess the other portion of my background is I am a licensed engineer. You are seeing more and more public works directors that are not licensed, but I do come from that engineering background, and that my career has really been focused on capital projects. So it's really fitting to be here tonight as part of that. And with that, I will turn it over to Leif.
My turn?
Your turn.
Okay. So I'm Leif Johansson. I'm the city's capital project delivery manager. My title just changed, so
Well, not yet, but close.
yeah. I think on here it says my new title. So I get to manage our capital project PMs and follow those projects through the design phase and into construction. It's a really neat group. I love working on a team like that. I'm a city of Shoreline resident. Being able to serve the community that I live is a really special thing to me. I am also a civil engineer by trade and have always done municipal work. When I was doing design, it was with different agencies, but I always loved that aspect of serving the community, building infrastructure on the public side and looking for really great ways to solve problems. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tavia?
And Tavia.
Hi, I'm Tavia Tan. I'm the city's community engagement coordinator. I'm also a Shoreline resident, and I've also, I think, probably started about the same time Trish did. I've been working for the city for about 18 years. I've been in the communications program all that time, and just in the last year shifted to working with the capital projects team, making sure that everybody knows about and can provide their input on our capital projects. And I just have really loved seeing how things have changed in Shoreline since I lived here. When I moved here, Aurora had 0 sidewalks and an exotic meat store right out there. And just the change that we've seen here and how our projects can improve our city has been really great. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to have to keep turning my head once in a while to make sure you're on the slide that I'm talking about. Next slide. No, those are hidden slides.
No.
Valerie, somehow they didn't stay hidden.
All right, stand by.
Those are our planning slides.
Stand by.
They're not hidden as if they're bad, but they were our organizational slides. Make sure we were staying on track with what we wanted.
Yeah, right. Enunciate.
Think so.
Okay. The intent with this portion is to let you know that the community shapes our city. That's how government was intended in our country, and that is really how it works here in the city of Shoreline. That's part of the reason I am in the waning years of my career working here, because that's important to me. We've got a supported, very supportive elected body, and the community's input is important to us. So you vote for our council members to represent you. We ask you to provide input into long-term vision and goals during comprehensive and master planning processes. We do and take very seriously resident satisfaction surveys. We ask you for input during specific project planning and design. We invite you to and take very seriously comments that you share during city council meetings. And many of you communicate directly with us, with Leif's team, with Trish. If you go to the next slide, just a little bit about, we do have a vision to be a welcoming and inclusive city where equity, well-being, and environmental sustainability are advanced by diverse, connected community. We have a mission, which is important to us as well. We fulfill our community's vision. We deliver quality and accessible public services responsibly, equitably, and efficiently. Our values are much more about how we work in the bold below at the bottom: integrity, respect, teamwork, equity, learning, and sustainability. So this is not so much, those values are not so much about just what projects we do, it's how we work to determine what projects we're going to do and how we work together as human beings. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to make sure to start this portion about planning off to mention, as you may well know, that the Washington State's Growth Management Act, otherwise thought of as the GMA, it's a series of state statutes first adopted in 1990. They require cities like ours and counties to develop a comprehensive plan to manage and develop the plans to accommodate our population growth. So our comprehensive plan is an important part of what we do. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. We're not intending to go into detail about it, but it is an important part of what kind of frames the sorts of investments we make in infrastructure. Then there's also the Puget Sound Regional Council Vision 2050. The Puget Sound Regional Council it is a collection of cities, counties, tribes, ports, agencies, businesses, and communities that work together, created the vision to prepare for growth and serve as a guide for sustaining a healthy environment, thriving community, and strong economy. You may or may not know, but by 2050, our population is expected to reach 5.8 million people. And so we want to continue to enjoy living here as we have that growth. The PSRC itself is an organization that helps direct resources, funding resources. And so we are able to pursue grant, and it is important for us in order to be selected for those grants to make sure that we're doing projects that are significant in the region as well as in the city. There's also King County countywide planning process and some other policies and guidance in particular around how our utilities are planned for and managed. So if you go to the next slide, comprehensive plan is a long-range roadmap for us for the next 20 years. You can find more information about our comprehensive plan online called Shoreline 2044. Significant level of public engagement goes into the formation of all of these plans, a comprehensive plan, and then 5 master plans, including the transportation master plan, the surface water master plan, the wastewater master plan, the parks, recreation, open space, and arts plan, and then the climate action plan. So for many of these high-level plans, staff spends months seeking resident input and confirming priorities and reviewing drafts, and then council reviews and approves, if they're so inclined, each plan. If you go to the next slide, just a little bit more about the transportation element. There's an element of our comprehensive plan that is required by state law called the transportation element. And that is one section of the comprehensive plan, and it guides the transportation investments for the next 20 years. So that element identifies a roadmap for creating a welcoming and functional multimodal transportation system for all users. So that includes consideration of pedestrians, bicyclists, those using shared use mobility devices, those riding transit, and those driving in personal vehicles. So, and then out of the transportation element, we also develop a transportation master plan, which we have recently completed, and it shares the same vision, goals, and guidance, but it provides a more detailed kind of implementation actions for the transportation system. So the transportation master plan itself is also recently available online. You get lots of really good information in there about what our transportation goals, vision, and actions are. So the goals that you'll see in that document are largely around safety. We are required to provide a safe transportation system as well as equity, multimodality, connectivity, climate resilience, and then community vibrancy are the goals that you'll find in that plan. So if you go to the next slide, a little bit more about our surface water master plan. Typically, the surface water master plan is updated every 6 to 7 years. It is a required plan for our surface water utility, and it reviews our priorities and it updates our plans for the coming years. And then, so what a plan like this is going to look at is current regulatory requirements and do the best it can to understand the future potential regulatory changes so that our system can continue growing in such a way that we will continue to meet the regulatory requirements. We want to make sure it reflects the priorities of the community and addressing other priority surface water issues. So in particular for the surface water plan, it's going to look at looks at aging infrastructure, making sure that we're replacing aging infrastructure as needed. But it also pays attention to flooding in shoreline streets and neighborhoods, prevent water pollution in shoreline streams, lakes, and Puget Sound. And then it focuses as well on equity of utility services and protecting and restoring streams, lakes, and the other surrounding natural areas. So that is the surface water master plan. We also have a wastewater master plan. Next slide, if you're not there already. The wastewater master plan, it is most likely that in the future we're going to get our wastewater master plan on a system that is completed concurrently with the surface water master plan. Right now we still have a comprehensive sewer plan that was adopted by the Ronald Wastewater District prior to the city's assumption of Ronald several years ago. So that will be updated, and again, it will focus on aging infrastructure of the wastewater system, upcoming regulatory requirements, and ensuring service levels are clear to the community as well as our internal staff, planners and project managers, and that we're fulfilling those service levels with the public. So that is a bit about planning. Projects emerge from those plans, primarily the transportation plan, the surface water plan, and the wastewater plan. Projects begin to be developed through those processes, and then we start a process of identifying funding for how we're going to actually be able to afford to get those improvements implemented. Tricia's going to talk a little bit about the funding challenges or fun that we have.
The fun, that's the fun part, huh? Okay, just making sure we're on the right slide. So I also want to highlight and remember, because she did have on there, there's a PROSA plan, right, for parks. And so it similarly identifies a bunch of capital projects and capital needs as well. So all of these projects, or all of these plans, again, set the vision. And they establish priorities for how to prioritize projects and type of projects. But then we get to how do we fund those projects? So here you can just see a list of a lot of sources of funding, right? And then it becomes how do we get the vision from those plans into reality, and how do we piece these funds together? So there's a variety here, and depending on which fund or which types of projects depends on which type of funds are eligible for them. The surface water and the wastewater utilities are unique and special compared to the general capital fund, which is where most of your parks projects are, and the roads capital fund, because as part of those master plans, they do a rate study. So as part of approving and updating those plans, there's a rate study that says, okay, we want to do these projects, and what is that going to cost relative to rates? And so council then approves rate increases in order to meet the level of master planning we want to do to get to that vision. So those are unique for those. Not quite the same for general capital fund and roads capital fund, where we have other sources. Their primary source of revenue is real estate and excise tax. That's money that's collected every time a house is sold, or a commercial property. Any type of property is sold, there's a real estate excise tax. That is a fundamental piece of funding for the general capital fund and the transportation fund. And then also grants. This community is very aggressive at obtaining grants, and we're very successful at obtaining grants. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. And so we really try and piece these together. We also have park impact fees that are listed here. Again, that goes with development. As new development comes in, they pay a park impact fee. Same with transportation impact fees. That's part of this approach of growth pays for growth. And as we bring in this new development, we also need to be able to fund the transportation infrastructure and the park infrastructure. There are limits in what those funds can be used for. And so if we move to the next slide. Again, we're mainly showing the funds. There are 5 capital funds in addition to roads capital fund, surface water, wastewater, parks. We also have a facilities major maintenance, which is a pretty small fund that handles improvements to City Hall, Spartan, Richmond Highlands, places like that. But we're really going to focus on these 3 because they're the ones that Public Works primarily manages, and we're most comfortable and confident with what they have. And so you can see, if you look at that first circle, that's roads capital, and you can really see with that pie, that dark blue and that turquoise, that is grants. Either grants that have been awarded or grants that we're anticipating getting in order to build project. Those 2 pieces alone is over 60% of our funding for transportation and roads capital projects. And then when you look at that next one, that yellow slide, that's really the new sidewalk program. And so in 2018, the residents approved a ballot measure to increase your sales and use tax to then focus it on the construction of new sidewalks. So that yellow piece, that yellow wedge, is really the bonds that we're issuing in order to build those new sidewalk programs. Those 3 pieces of the pie really is over almost 80% of the pie. And then you can see a bunch of small slivers of pie. Transportation impact fees, again, come from development. REIT, again, comes from sales of property. We do have some general fund contribution where there's projects that council's really feels is really important, and they do general fund contribution. And then we have some other smaller pieces like utility contributions, things like that. But really, it is, we really are dependent when it comes to transportation on those grants. And then when you look at the wastewater and the surface water, the 2 smaller ones, you can see they really are dependent on those rates, right? They have, you pay rates, you pay your wastewater bill. You may not realize you pay a surface water bill, but you do pay surface water fees with your property taxes. And those are really what drive our expenditures on those 2 funds. We do get grants. We do issue bonds that then we have to pay back with those rates. So there is a combination of things, but a lot fewer grants available for utilities than there are for transportation, both federal and at the state level. And then if I was to have a pie relative to general fund or to the general capital fund, which is where your parks projects are, it's also where facilities projects are, you would see REIT, and right now you would really see it's dominated by the park bond. Those are the things that really are driving that fund right now. And with that, I think I get to turn it over.
We were going to see if there's any questions at this point.
Good.
Of course.
Patty Hale, Ridgecrest neighborhood. Wastewater utility. Cost to ratepayers seem continually to be increasing. At least I seem to notice it on my bill. How do I and others get an accounting of where my money is going? What projects are up and coming and or currently happening that account for the increases almost on what seems to be a monthly basis? I think the city does a really good job of accounting for other department areas, but for some reason, we don't hear or see much about where those increases in our bill go.
And specific to the wastewater fund? Yeah, so hopefully your bill shouldn't be changing, your rate shouldn't be changing like monthly. Or bi-monthly, because you get the bill bi-monthly. So those rates are a combination of things. So there is a portion of your rate, in fact, the largest portion of your rate has to do with wastewater treatment, right? We do the collection and we send it to either King County or to Edmonds for treatment. And so we pay them, and that is reflected on your bill as well. And then there is a portion of your bill that is about the services that we as the city provide in that collection system. That covers things from, again, making sure the pipes are in good condition through inspection and jetting of them, but also capital projects. So if you want to see the accounting for those capital projects, you would look at the 6-year CIP, and we've identified the projects and when they're projected to be. That again rolls up into that rate study, but again, that rate study covers more than capital as well.
So is there a rate study information available online for residents to look? I mean, I am not going to try to do my own research to figure out what we're getting charged for processing of sewage. I mean, but I'm interested, how much of my bill is that I get at home, and what projects are going on? What are we updating?
Yeah, so the rate, we did the most recent rate study after assumption to support got to get my bienniums right. So we probably did a rate study in 2022 that influenced the 23-24 biennium. That was the first time that as a city we pulled capital into the city after assumption. So that rate study is available. It should be available online. If it's not, I can certainly send you a link to it, along with a link to the wastewater capital plan, if that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And again, much of the capital plan for the wastewater utility, we have taken from that comprehensive sewer plan that was developed when it was still part of Ronald. We've been tweaking it and massaging it, but we again haven't done our own full comprehensive sewer plan yet. It will be coming up soon.
We're doing an asset management plan right now.
We are doing an asset, yep.
Okay, we have a couple other audience questions. What will be the impact on grants and projects due to federal cuts?
You guys both look at that smile you gave me.
And before you all answer that, I just want to say that was also asked by Valerie in the virtual audience. So.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it's a little bit still unknown, and it can kind of change over time. We have a combination of, again, transportation grants. Most of the transportation grants we have received, we feel pretty confident we will be able to keep those grants, not lose those grants that are related, that come out of U.S. Department of Transportation. That could change. I think where we're going to see big changes is in future grants. what's the criteria going to be, how competitive will we be, and how many dollars will there be available. And we won't know that until we get to another grant cycle to see what that will look like. Now, we do have FEMA grant money for 175th. That is one that we think is still secure, but we feel like it is probably the funding right now that is most at risk. We have received information from FEMA that they are actively trying to cancel as many FEMA projects, brick projects as they can. But for right now, we're proceeding as if we have that money until we're officially told no.
Okay, one more. Is the 2018 sidewalk bond going to construct all 12 new sidewalks, or will another bond be needed?
It will construct all 12 sidewalks. That was the commitment that we had when we did that. We are collecting sales and use tax. We don't have any projections at this point that indicate we can't.
That's what Trish has told Leif and I.
Build 12 sidewalks.
Okay. Bonnie Berry, Hillwood neighborhood. I'm just curious, I know the city's really good at getting grants, but what is the process, if there is one, for the city to budget for maintenance of grants when they're received? So for example, all the work on Aurora, then what was the process for budgeting maintenance costs for that? And are they anticipated? Are those costs kind of built into how the city decides what grants to pursue?
It's a great question, and it's an ongoing challenge, right? The capital funds from grants build the capital improvements, but they don't come with money for maintenance. So we do have to make sure we can do that. How we do that historically, it's probably been a little bit of a mix, and maybe perhaps not the best, but it's definitely something we're aware of. We're trying to do a better job at anticipating that. But we don't chase grants for the sake of chasing grants. We first follow the council's vision, like the vision to improve Aurora, and then we go and seek out grants that will fulfill that need. So again, those are the visions of the council, is to deliver that project. And on that particular project, as they went, they were trying to identify what some of the costs of maintenance would be. So those could be then incorporated in the operating budget. Whether enough was incorporated into the operating budget or not is another story. And we're similarly dealing with the same issue relative to the parks bond projects, and ensuring that if we build these parks, that we can also maintain them. There were some new positions in the city's 25-26 budget to add staff so we could make sure we can maintain those new parks.
I would like to speak to that a bit.
Yeah.
For the 10 years that I was in the private sector, this is work that I was involved with. It is, the question that you asked is an industry-wide problem. With the entire, in our country, it is much easier to get capital money to build stuff. It is much more difficult. There is not grant money available to maintain stuff. And so that is how the money has been allocated. And I think it came from past generations of civil engineers that like to put their name on stuff. So I don't like it. I've been fighting it my entire career. And it is a challenge. I appreciate you asking it. What we need to do, and what we are working to do, is to better identify as clearly as we possibly can what it's going to take to operate and maintain when we're in the planning phase, when we're in the design phase, so that we don't end up waiting until the end and then figure it out. And so the need for reliability, maintainability, ongoing safety, we'd like to not have to replace things after they've been installed once. If, for example, if we find problems with how to maintain them, we don't want to have that happen. And so it's up to us to make sure we're asking those questions, getting good information about the whole life cycle of what we're building. Appreciate you asking the question.
I'm Courtney Ewing with Richmond Highlands, and I was just curious about the about the sidewalks, the voter-approved bill. Is that kind of tracking as far as the predictions for the amount of money that would come in via sales tax and the vehicle tabs? Is that kind of tracking with what y'all were hoping, or do you know?
I don't think I have a great answer for that. I mean, my understanding is we are collecting the sales tax at or above the rate that we had anticipated. But we also know that our costs of construction continue to escalate. So again, that when we did the ballot measure, we were fairly conservative in both of our revenue projections and tried to be pretty aggressive on our cost estimates, although probably not aggressive enough. And so we are continuing to try and balance that. But we did anticipate there being kind of a fair chunk of money at the end that we could use to build other projects or to do maintenance on sidewalks. And we may not be able to get there depending on how that revenue increase relative to the escalation of construction lines up.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure with like it seems like the last couple of years, Shoreline's finally started to see an increase in population. So I wasn't sure if we were like, oh my gosh, there's more money, even though things are more expensive.
Yeah, we're still in the first few. We have 3 projects delivered. We have 3 under design, right? So we really haven't started to look past those 12 because, again, I want us to be focused on getting those 12 built.
Okay, thanks.
Back on sidewalks again, just a question that we were talking about earlier. In terms of sidewalks, and this isn't specific to Dayton, it's just that looking at that work has come up, is, when the bond was passed for sidewalks, it was for sidewalks, and now a lot of the design is sidewalks and bike lanes. Are those costs being separate so that we're not using sidewalk bond funds to build bike lanes?
Yeah, we're separate.
You gotta take mine.
Yeah, we separate them as best we can. I think on that project in particular, and I'm speaking from memory, which is dangerous, I think we're actually shifting the road so there's not a lot of new pavement created for the bike lane. So the sidewalk is really the widened area, so.
I don't need the numbers, I just
Yeah.
want to know that they're being tracked
Yeah.
separately so that sidewalks are paid for by the bond, so we get as much sidewalk as we can with that money.
Yeah, it is a balance, and you are seeing some areas where we're doing a shared facility, a wider sidewalk that can meet both pedestrian and bicycle needs together.
Shall we move on?
I'm fine with moving on.
I think we should combine your 2 parts and then do more questions after that, because I think that it's going to be helpful to get into the examples.
Okay. All right, so I am going to do a little bit of a dive into project delivery. So for me, this is the fun, exciting part. The projects start to emerge, they get named, put into lists and so forth. As Liz talked about, the vast majority of our projects come from the master planning work done by the asset owners. The 3 primary lines are the surface water, wastewater, and transportation service lines. So they're doing the planning work, building the master plans. There's also some other supplemental documents, including like the pedestrian plan, the sidewalk prioritization plan, ADA transition plans, various corridor studies, and then feasibility studies all over the place that also help us kind of package, understand, and then prioritize these projects into something that we can budget for and deliver. Once they are prioritized, we start looking at how to put them into that CIP, the city's capital budget. For transportation projects in particular, and you can go to the next slide, they, prior to going in the CIP, typically go on the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan. And this is actually a state requirement. When we're going over for grant funding, typically we have all of those projects on this list. The idea is, per our CW, the state wants us to have a comprehensive list of our transportation projects, shows that we're carrying out a well-coordinated transportation program. Next slide. So back to the CIP. So every 2 years, in alignment with the biennial budget, We present the new CIP with any modifications or new projects that we'd like to add onto that. It really reflects our prioritized and funded projects. It goes to council and the public for review, and this is really a great opportunity for the community to get plugged into what we're presenting for, what we think are the best projects to move forward. So attending hearings or contacting, working with us through outreach this is a great opportunity. Ultimately, with approval from council, this gives us an open road to start delivering the project, start to resource that project. Next slide. So one of the important things here for, I think, kind of understanding projects from really early on is being able to look at a project page and understand what's up there. So I'm going to just kind of go through it quickly here. So on any new project, we put a full page in. We used to put a page for every single project that we're working on. The new budgets, we're only doing the new projects, and then some of the projects with significant change have a little bit more in here too. But our new projects, and I chose 30th Ave sidewalk because this is kind of a run-of-the-mill project. So what you'd see if you cracked open the CIP. What project again? This is the 30th Ave Northeast sidewalk. Hopefully you won't ask me too much more about that sidewalk project because I'm not super familiar with it. But
I can answer.
She can. Perfect. That's why we have Trish here. So we always have a project description, and this kind of lays out what the scope of that project is. Are we building sidewalks, bike lanes? Are we widening the road, or are we, putting in a new sewer pipe? And the next section is the service impact. So this section typically focuses on what services are being enhanced. And again, are we putting in new pipes so that people's toilets flush, putting in a higher level of service for them, or are we enhancing the flow of traffic? The third section here, future operating impacts, kind of goes into your question about, are we thinking about how this is going to impact the city in the future? If we're building a new pool, do we need to plan for bringing in outside help to maintain that, or do we have staff on hand? So we are putting that in here historically, but you can see it is a light section even now. So moving down in the budget numbers, we always have the expenditures over revenue, and you can look at this and actually kind of pull out the project schedule. You can see up there on the project administration line item, that is where we put all of our design efforts, both staff and consultant time. And if you look, it's across 2027 and 2028. I think we have about $480,000 on this project. So that tells you we're going to start design in 2027, and it's going to flow into 2028. And then if you move down, you see also in 2028 we have some construction funding. So that tells you that right now we're planning to construct this project in 2028. So this gives you a really early window into what we're thinking, kind of before maybe the PMs have really gotten a hold of it and really refined the schedule. And then, of course, the revenue section is very important. You can see how we're planning to pay for this. This one has 2 line items. 145th quarter probably has 15 line items. So that's why I chose this one. We have some sound transit funds. So, it's either a grant or some kind of partnership, probably supports light rail. So you kind of learn stuff from looking at this. And then the other fund is the roads cap fund. So this is a transportation related fund. So roads cap is the primary fund to pay matches to that grant or that partnership with Sound Transit. Next slide. So once the project is in the CIP, it gets transferred from the planning functions or those asset ownership functions into engineering. And so that's when I get a hold of it and start getting excited, get to start thinking about which of the PMs would be a good fit for this, who's free to add another project to their little portfolio. So our team right now, we have 12 PMs. I don't think we've ever been fully staffed since I've been at the city. She said every time we mention it, we lose somebody. So this time we're not gonna. But we're fully staffed, which is really cool. We have 12 PMs. We all have some sort of a background in like civil engineering or planning or project management. So these are all folks that are managing at least one project, some much more than that of varying complexity. We have engineer 1, 2, and 3, with engineer 3s managing the most technical, challenging projects, respectively. Once a PM is assigned, their first order of work is to put together a project management plan. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's their opportunity to present to us how they would like to conduct that project. Answers questions like, are we going to be designing this one in-house, or are we going to need to get consultants? What is the public outreach going to look like for this project? Is there going to be one open house 5, or do we not need to do public outreach, which is never the case. But we're trying to get all of that kind of bundled up into one document and then kind of come to agreement on what this project actually is. Perhaps the most important part of this is baselining the projects. We're asking the PMs to see if they agree with the budget, scope, schedule that the planning function presented. And if we agree, then it's easy. Yeah, we'll take this and carry it forward. But sometimes we find some problems. Maybe economic conditions have made the project cheaper than the planning function thought it was going to be. That typically doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. Or maybe what happens is sometimes we combine 2 projects. Maybe we have a road surface project, but we know that a wastewater project wants to come in there and put in a new pipe, so we decide to combine them, and so that project management plan kind of looks different than what was budgeted, so we have a little work to do. So this is how we get our PMs to commit to numbers and take responsibility and then carry that forward. Next slide. So in Public Works, we use a project lifecycle process that we call the stage gate process. Essentially what this does this is a very complex slide. This is probably too complex to have on the board, but what it is it's just, yeah. So, yeah, it's too small to read. Don't look at that. But essentially what we're doing is we're breaking a project into phases. We have a design and construction phase, and we're placing a gate that PM must address. Series of questions, governance, have you done your public outreach, those type of things, to make sure that these projects are being led in a way that really is predictable, and consistent, a way that we know that risks are being managed well on our projects. It really helps to optimize our project outcomes. Next slide. So construction, we were actually going to have a 4th member talk about construction tonight. We actually didn't talk about who's going to cover that, but I'll go ahead and do that. So we have a unique, or I think a great setup at the City of Shoreline, where other agencies, a lot of times the design phase, once you're done with that, they send the project over to the construction group. It gets assigned a new PM who maybe doesn't know anything about the project, and then they run it through construction. At City of Shoreline, your PM is assigned for the whole life cycle of the project. It makes PM's role pretty demanding because you have to know a lot of stuff about 2 separate phases. It's a handful. But what it does is it reduces project costs by keeping the knowledge base kind of central to how that project is run. Kind of moving on to just construction in general. Some of the things that we get asked about in construction are like the mess on the side, or where the contractor is staging. You'll go out to a project and you'll see a big area of private property where the contractor has a mess. Typically, we don't provide a staging area for the contractor. What they'll do is they'll reach out to private parties and they'll go under contract with that private party and rent part of their site. So we really don't have a lot of authority other than we can badger them about sweeping up a mess or covering graffiti or something like that. But a lot of times they'll go and ask whoever has the biggest parking lot if they can put a trailer and some materials out there. Noise concerns, we get a lot of questions about that, and night work. I believe the hours of that noise is regulated is like from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning per our code. If it is in the public's benefit to for us to give the contractor a deviation to that, like say we're going to be able to save a lot of money, or we're going to be able to get in front of a big storm or something, sometimes we'll let them work through that with the appropriate oversight. But that is one of the things we work hard to kind of alleviate some of the stress on the community. And then noticing. And during construction, typically we do 2 notices about 3 months in advance of construction. We send out postcards to everybody within, say, 500 feet of the project. It can be thousands of postcards saying construction coming soon, a few facts about the project, maybe 6 to 3 weeks before construction, we send out another mailer to the people immediately adjacent. You know, it says, hey, we're gonna be out there in 3 weeks. Your driveway may be blocked for a little bit, but if you coordinate with us, we can keep it open when you need it, and that type of stuff. So usually 2 postcards, and then some of our very impacted residents will, you know, be on first name basis with, and our PMs will be making sure the contractor is working with them. So next slide. So this slide summarizes our current allocation of projects, and there's a lot up here. So by fund, so the roads fund, all of our transportation projects, we have about 48. Surface water, we have 33, wastewater 21, and then facilities projects 6. Now these are the projects that are being managed by Public Works. There are several parks projects, facilities projects, certainly some IT projects that are managed by others outside of Public Works. They don't show up in these metrics, but this is really what we're tracking. So right now we have 12 PMs, and they're either assigned or they will be assigned to 108 projects kind of in the near future. It's a lot that we're carrying forward with that small group. Next slide. Okay, now did you want to combine this?
Well, I thought it might be best, we do have some examples, we're just gonna kind of walk through a few examples. We could take questions from you on our process stuff and then go to the examples, or we can wait until we've gone through these and just see what all questions you might have. Let's just keep on going.
We'll keep on,
Because,
we'll keep on going.
because
And,
I think that some of what we talk about here might answer some of the questions.
right, and we're almost,
Yeah, I think we can move ahead.
Okay.
all right, okay. Okay, so we wanted to talk about some examples, and I'll say a few things about just our sidewalk programs, just because of the strong planning and delivery that comes out of those. I think they're kind of fun to talk about. So we have the 2 main programs, the new sidewalk program and then the sidewalk rehab program. I'm going to talk basically about the new sidewalk program that's funded by the 0.2% tax. The goal, yeah, we're on the right side. So the main goal of all of our sidewalk program is ADA compliance, Americans with Disability Act compliance, and then specifically the new sidewalk program closes gaps in our sidewalk infrastructure. Where we don't have sidewalk and we want it, this program puts it into those gaps. So now this is the trivia piece. Next slide. Does anybody know what year Shoreline was incorporated? Somebody? 1995. Well done. Now, do you know how many miles of sidewalks we had in 1995? What's your guess?
A lot less than you have.
Thank you for that. So turns out we had 54 miles in 1995, so when we incorporated. Since then we've built 23 miles. However, some of that is by developers. I don't have that metric, but it's quite a bit. We've put quite a bit in those years. So we have a total of 77 now, with I think 75 to go. So we're making progress on sidewalks. That's a good thing.
Past the halfway point, you're saying?
Oh yeah, we're past the halfway point.
We got 77, 75.
We've got, wait, I don't know.
A bunch of the,
I can break it down more. I don't know. I'm not going to commit to anything.
I was gonna say, where's your total sidewalk number, your 145 or 150 miles coming from? Is that
From our sidewalk program manager.
or our sidewalk plan? It could be.
I confess I'm recycling numbers, but they're interesting metrics. It kind of gives you the scope. It's not 500 miles of sidewalk. It's 100 and some. So we still consistently hear from residents that sidewalks are a concern. Residents want sidewalks. So going back to 2017, city convened the sidewalk advisory committee, the diverse committee, did a bunch of work, and out comes the prioritization criteria of safety, equity, proximity, and connectivity. That work led to the sidewalk prioritization plan, which is really a strong document that identifies a whole bunch of sidewalk projects and helped us build that estimate for the bonding and so forth. Let's see. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the 12 sidewalk projects that are part of the new sidewalk program that I think were mentioned here, that's what this slide represents. The blue are the ones complete. The yellow, or sorry, the yellow are in progress, and then the pink are the ones to come, or the purple are the ones to come. 8th Ave is the project that you're going to see action on the soonest. We're charging ahead towards construction.
West.
Northwest, yeah. Coming very soon. So next
I
slide.
think there are sidewalks on Northeast. Oh, no, not all of Northeast.
So go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so these are the 3 projects that we've completed so far. So you see First Ave, just north of the Spartan Center, between 192nd and 195th. And then we have 5th, that was done between 175th and 182nd. And then 20th Ave between 190th and 195th down by Saltwater Park. Great projects. We've probably all walked them at this point. And coming up soon, as I mentioned, 8th Ave, we're adding that really soon here. 19th Ave between 196th and 205th is scheduled for construction next year. And then the Dayton project between 178th and Richmond Beach Road is also scheduled for next year. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And at that, I'm going to hand it off to Liz to talk about our big project.
Yeah, I didn't think we could do Capital Projects 101 without talking about some of the mega projects, and we'll go through these quickly. So there we go. So this is, what you're seeing up there across the bottom is the 145th corridor. What's currently in construction, which presumably you all are aware that there's a massive project in construction there at 145th and I-5. What's currently in construction is the portion to the right in sort of the orangish yellow color on screen. It's phase 1 of the 145th corridor project plus the I-5 interchange improvements. Those were 2 projects designed separately and then combined because it made most sense to go to bid with them together for a single construction project. So as part of the work that's currently in construction, we're replacing the signalized intersections on both sides of I-5 with roundabouts and are also updating the lane configurations on the bridge over I-5. On the west side of the interchange, we're widening the roadway between I-5 and Corliss Avenue to improve traffic operations, mobility, and safety. And then phases 2 and 3 of the 145th Street Corridor project will go into advertisement late next year, late 2026. Might possibly see some work late next year, but more likely most of that work is going to happen in 2027 and 2028 with that'll extend those corridor improvements to Linden Avenue. These projects are extremely complex due to shared jurisdictions. That roadway, we don't have complete control over that roadway. We only have partial control over that roadway. The number of different funding sources that we have pulled together, really incredible work that was done here at the City of Shoreline. Trish was involved in it. Leif had some involvement in it. People that are no longer here had some involvement in it to pull a lot of different funding sources together. And if any of you know much about grant funding, all funding sources come with their own commitments and strings attached. So if you can imagine the challenges of managing a project like that, and then for those of you that are not familiar with what civil engineers do, transportation engineers in particular, we try to improve the road and the sidewalk, and if needed, the bike lanes. But the fact is that what's under the road is a whole bunch of utilities. And so whenever we're doing work on a roadway, and in particular this one, it's just packed with utilities. And what you don't realize until you get into it is sometimes it's hard to know where those utilities are. So probably the most complicated project that I've ever been involved with is in the middle of being built right now, but it is going to provide wonderful regional improvements. You're going to see much better movement. You can go to the next slide now. What you see here is a rendering that many of you may have seen in your Currents newsletter that just might have showed up on your front porch yesterday, possibly, or the day before. So this is a rendering of what the 2 new roundabouts are going to look like, what they would look like roughly from the air, except you don't see the light rail across the top there. Very excited about these improvements. They'll be in operation a little over a year from now. I would like to encourage you to learn about roundabouts if you don't already know about them. The reason for us going to the investment and work to install them here is because traffic will move better once they're installed and as soon as people get figured out how to use them. And we all have to take some responsibility for that. There will be also less emissions because cars don't have to stop. They can keep going. And in addition to that, there will be less toxins. In case you don't realize this, every time we put the brakes on our cars, we end up with toxins that often find their way into receiving bodies, and they're bad for the fish from the brake systems in your cars. And it's also safer. So there is a lot of data that shows that there's many fewer car-to-car accidents and many fewer pedestrian accidents. So we're very excited about these improvements, and we appreciate the patience of the community as we continue to get this project done. So I wanted to talk also about another exciting project we've got. Next slide, there we go. The I-5 forms a barrier to direct access to the Sound Transit Shoreline South 148 station from neighborhoods west of I-5. The 148th, what we refer to as the non-motorized bridge project, constructs pedestrian and bike bridge spanning across I-5, and it'll connect the north end station plaza. So the graphic to the right, it's the location of the new bridge, and it illustrates 2 phases of construction. The first phase is shown in the green, kind of on the upper right-hand side of that graphic, and the second phase is in yellow, crossing I-5. So the first phase has been under construction for some time now. Contractor was issued full notice to proceed in December 2023. The work on this contract's been to install the bridge, pier foundations on the east side of I-5. And then phase 2 is primarily the work west of I-5, and that will also be the installation of the bridge itself. And it's been awarded and will start construction later this year. And we anticipate a beautiful new bridge, next slide, to be completed in 2028. So that'll be another wonderful improvement. So this here is an artist rendering of what the bridge will look like once it's done. Okay, shall I talk about Hidden Lake? Can't remember what we decided, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, next slide. This is one of my favorite projects because of the improvements that are being done. The Hidden Lake Dam Removal Project, again, this is a very interesting project from our surface water utility fund. So Hidden Lake was a man-made lake originally constructed to trap sediment. And over time, what would happen is the sediment would build up and the city would have to periodically go in and remove sediment. And that was very costly, time-consuming process. We decided to remove the artificially created lake, and we are in process of restoring Bowen Creek to its original condition. So overall, the project replaces some aging infrastructure, provides many improvements, environmental benefits, including to water quality and habitat for the native species, also removes the barriers to fish passage, reduces maintenance costs, and the project will also include trail improvements within the Bowen Creek Park. So it is also being constructed in 2 phases. We don't always do projects in 2 phases, but sometimes we do because of seasons. Sometimes we do because of different types of work, and sometimes we have to do it because that's the way we can get our grant funding. So it's unfortunate that there are many times when we do that for what I think are sort of artificially imposed reasons. The first phase was removal of the dam and restoration of Bowen Creek in what was the former lake bed, and that phase has been completed. And the second phase replaces the culverts under Northwest Innisarden Way, and that is scheduled to go to bid towards the end of the year, with construction starting in 2026, and it'll be completed in 2027. So that is an exciting project to make improvements in the city.
Yeah, they're all exciting projects.
Some of them are more exciting than others.
Okay, next, go ahead and go to the next slide. Back one slide. There you go. So this is our final slide. And this just has a list of some of our other active projects that you probably will see go to construction pretty soon. So we have a roundabout going in at 160th, NSR and Greenwood. Should go to bid pretty quick here. Probably will see most construction on that next year. I think we're gonna hit the wet season. So this is right outside Shoreline Community College, paid for partially by the college. We have the 2025 pavement preservation project. We actually just had the bid opening for that. Not sure who it's getting today. Yeah. I don't know who it's gonna go to, but we're going through that and we'll be all ready for the paving season here, right on time. The 8th Ave new sidewalk project that I mentioned already. And then we have a lift station 12, a wastewater project that also is on the list here. So on the right of this slide,
What's Barnacle Creek?
oh, did I skip Barnacle Creek? Oh, I like Barnacle Creek. This is another one of those. This is on Bowen Creek, right? Boy, I couldn't tell you the cross street on it. I should be able to, but I couldn't. Yeah,
It's the west side of town.
yeah. I just can't remember that. Yeah, north. Yeah. I should know the name. Sorry, or the cross street. But so this project is going to be bid later this year. I'm thinking probably this winter. What we have is it's a big box culvert that we're putting in, and there's going to be a long lead time for procurement of that. So I think 2026 dry season, when we can get into the creek up there and do some work, we'll be replacing that. So it's a great project. And then, okay, so on the right side of this slide, we have the main project landing page. So this is where, if you're interested in learning about a project, this is the place to go. So this is on the city's website. You can find links to all of the web pages for our active projects. As soon as they're assigned to PMs, we set up a web page. Typically before that, they already have a web page, but certainly once a PM is assigned, there's information up there about who's managing it, the schedules, if various reports are available, like arborist reports or outreach summaries. This is where the best place to go get information about our projects. It also gives you a way to sign up for e-notifications and participate in public outreach. So, yeah. This is the whole shebang. This is everything that we're working on.
Regarding the Hidden Lake project, when they replace those culverts, is that going to be like completely open all the way to Puget Sound? Like, could we be seeing salmon in the near future?
Well,
Or are there still some obstacles down?
I think this is one phase of a major project beyond the scope.
Yeah, there are some other barriers downstream,
Yeah.
particularly the Seattle Golf Course has a pretty big barrier. So that's not within our control to change. But it's still, even when it talks about habitat, we're talking about habitat that's for more than just fish as well. So it's a great project. I think that picture that was up there, is that the one that shows the blue heron, right? It's kind of cool to see the wildlife
Yeah,
that we're seeing.
that little walkway with the wood and overlook is really awesome.
Yeah.
So also about Hidden Lake, so I was with King County Parks before Shoreline Incorporated, and Hidden Lake was problematic then. The Parks Department got the lease on Paramount School Park, and they took all the silt out of Hidden Lake and top-dressed Paramount Park.
Interesting.
Yes, turned into concrete. I also know what's
Probably pretty
on
sandy.
the other side of the railroad tracks at Puget Sound for the sediment that carries down through the creek and dumps in Puget Sound. Created quite a sandbar at one time. So I'm curious, with the removal of the dam, what happens with all of that sediment? Because it's still coming. So what is the plan to address that issue once the dam is there and it's no longer settling in the pond behind the dam? It's just going to go out in the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's a natural erosion process that happens with streams all the
Right.
time. And that is how deltas are formed.
Right.
So, yeah, that is what will happen. And it's healthier for the riparian, stream and for the habitat for it to actually happen that way naturally, as opposed to have these artificial barriers that just
Okay.
pile up.
Okay, I just needed to hear that. And then the question about the sidewalk project on 30th, north of 145th, right? Kind of south of Acacia. Why a sidewalk there? That is not even a through street.
so that is a Sound Transit funded project to support getting people to the new bus rapid transit station that's between. Right, and so there'll be a new BRT station there between 28th and 30th. So they were looking for access enhancement projects. So we have funding both for some very low-level bike facilities on 28th, which will also, I think, connect in from 15th, and then also that sidewalk from 30th. And yeah, it has a relatively small section of what it connects to, but I do think it opens up some other areas for people to be able to get there safely. It's mainly because it's adjacent to their BRT project, and I think Seattle's doing some improvements on the other side.
Kathleen Russell from Shoreline. I saw that 185th is a project. Can you tell me at what stage that's at?
It had a multi-corridor planning study done, and it is currently unfunded in any form.
Unfunded. Do you have any year that expectation?
No.
No. Okay, my second question is in chapter 1230 of the SMC for public tree replacements. Every non-entity, non-residential property has to replace trees. So Sound Transit has to replace trees, WashDOT, school district, except the city of Shoreline does not have to replace trees per the code, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Examples of this are on the maybe it was the second sidewalk, 5th Avenue from 175th to 182nd Court. Trees were down in that neighborhood, but no trees were replaced, as far as I know. And the other big example was in 2023, I think it was along 15th. And I understand that was because of the width, but none of those 26 trees were replaced. So do you know historically why that was written into code the way it is? You would know that. I mean,
Well, what the code says is that, so that whole section, not having it in front of me, but what is that is about when you need a permit. So you need a right-of-way use permit, and if you need a right-of-way use permit, you need to meet these conditions, which includes tree replacement. It also has in that same section of code that if it's a city public works project, you don't need to get a permit. So since we don't trigger needing a permit, then we don't trigger the tree replacement requirements. Now, that said, we do try to replace trees where we can, but we have a lot of limitations, as you're aware, relative to just either amenity zone or, like you said, on 5th, there is no amenity zone because we narrowed it to the extent we could in order to, again, not remove more mature trees on the backside of that sidewalk. So it is a balancing act. We do our best. And then the city has other programs where we're planting trees, including planting trees in the right-of-way. It's just through a different program.
correct, but the point is that those neighborhoods aren't getting those benefits of the trees removed. I understand you are planting trees, and we have asked for some page on the website to show the number of trees you're planting, which it's showing the number of trees coming out. But it would be really helpful to the community, like all the trees along Aurora. There is That's between 31 and 43 trees.
Yeah, there's
It's
trade-offs.
just the neighborhoods that aren't getting those replacement trees. So, wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Understood.
Another question on sidewalks. So one of the 12 projects in the future is along Linden Avenue. And I know part of that plan was the city knowing that the new Modera complex is putting in their improvements. And I believe the plan is also assuming that the second big multifamily home, the Brea, is also putting significant sidewalks in. Do you have any idea what the status is of that project? Because I believe it's been stalled. And what would happen to the city's responsibility of sidewalks on Linden if Brea doesn't keep moving forward?
That's a great question. I do not know the status of the Brea project. I know permits were issued a while ago, but again, all we've seen is the demo, right? So I don't know the status of that project. What that would mean to the sidewalk project. So when that project was programmed into the bond projects, it included that whole distance. The developments, this is also how we stretch those dollars, is those developments that are building the sidewalk then reduces how much sidewalk we need to build. So what Modera is building means we don't have to build, then we can fill the gap. Our hope would be just to fill the gap between Modera and Brea if Brea does come to fruition. So that is kind of, again, how we kind of try and stretch some of our dollars if we can get development to build some of these as well. We're hoping for the similar over on 15th Northeast, where Furcrest is doing some improvements. They will have to do some frontage improvements, and it'll reduce the amount of sidewalk we have to build.
Question about roundabouts. Example, 8th Avenue Northeast and Northeast 175th. A truck hit the raised concrete center of the traffic circle there. Was reported in Shoreline Area News yesterday, day before, that the city says that will not be repaired until sometime next year because of funding issues. Project money has already been all spoken for, so then I want to segue that into the traffic islands on either side of I-5 at 145th. I foresee several hits on the traffic islands and the retaining wall on those. Whose responsibility, should that happen, would that be to get those repaired? Because those are going to be two very busy traffic islands.
Yeah, so those roundabouts will be the responsibility of WashDOT. That's the interchange, that's their jurisdiction. They will have maintenance and ownership responsibility for those roundabouts.
The center of those roundabouts is also graduated.
Mm-hmm. The one on 8th and 185th also is. It's got
Yeah, it's got an apron on it.
it's got an apron on it, but then it also has a raised center that is a foot or better above the apron. And
They got it.
They totally got it, yeah.
through.
I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's what you normally see, but boy, it happened pretty closely after it was opened.
Yes, it's been a couple of months.
Yeah.
Comment and then a question. I can't guarantee it, but I believe, just as a point of interest, that Hidden Lake was actually dug out by Bill Boeing and had a fish hatchery in there. And I can remember seeing the concrete, at least parts of the concrete wall. So it wasn't just a retaining area. It was actually a fish hatchery, along with his stables and other things he had in that area. Question, in terms of notifying people, you talked about the 500-foot radius. Is there any difference between the type of project and the notification area? And specifically, I'm wondering, there's kind of a difference between road projects where people are just, where traffic is an issue. And for example, the requested rezone on the Furcrest property that was only, I think, probably sent out to 500-foot radius. And I happened to learn about it by somebody that lives in the area, but that's a much bigger kind of project.
Yeah, so that Fircrest project, again, remember, is a development project.
Right.
Right, so that notification is then managed through PCD, through Planning and Community Development. We're not really as involved with
Right.
that. And that, I think, has more some legal statutes around what's your notification area that you have to do for like SEPA and things like that. But that's really very different than our capital project delivery.
Right, okay.
It sounds like what you're saying is you would have, for just some of those, you would prefer for there to be broader communication.
Yeah, in those kinds of instances, I mean, that's a piece of state property, and to limit it to 500 feet just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you think about how big that property is, and then you think that immediately adjacent to that is Hamlin, which is a fairly big piece of property, so,
And then the lab.
yeah,
And the school district property.
yeah.
So I just wondered.
When we have our bigger impact projects, we try to put them in Currents. So for construction projects, we try to get it into Currents newsletter. Hopefully the timing works out so that everyone in Shoreline is notified.
That's a state project.
Right, that wouldn't apply to.
I'm curious about the how the design worked on 145th with Shoreline and Seattle and the state and all the utilities. Like, how did anything ever really get? Who got to choose the design?
It was a very collaborative effort. It was very collaborative, and you did have a lot of stakeholders that had to get involved, including, Metro and Sound Transit, who are going to operate buses. I mean, we went to the extent that they went out to a Metro facility and they created a mocked up roundabout so that the buses could try it and test it. To see that it would work. I mean, there is a video online, we did a little roundabout rodeo and got feedback from drivers. So it was very complicated. Like Liz said, this is probably one of the most complex projects I've been involved on because of those jurisdictional issues and because of the utility issues. It was a lot of work, which is why it took us a long time to actually get to construction.
You're excited for the roundabouts? Good. So am I.
Make sure you
No
tell
more
your friends.
big utility boxes, right?
So one of the important, what we typically try to do, I'll just share a little bit more insights on complex projects like this. The very collaborative, a lot of collaboration happened before I joined. But we have two different, we almost always hire engineering design firms that are specialized in what we're looking for. In this case, there was one for the portion of the 145th corridor project and a different one for the portion of the interchange and the roundabouts that we then combined. The thing about that project is we ended up going to bid before we had completed everything about what was underground and before we obtained all of our permits. We made a deliberate decision to do that, but normally on many projects you wouldn't do that. You would wait until you've got everything in hand and good certainty before you go to bid. We had to go to bid or we would have lost some of our funding. So it was one of those things where, and the city of Shoreline, I'm proud to be part of the city of Shoreline. These contractors are under contract with us, means we're taking the risk for it. But we've got all of these other stakeholders, the city of Seattle and WashDOT and Sound Transit, and all of these utilities in the ground. And so
Shoreline is managing that project.
we are managing that project.
Is that primarily because the light rail's on 148, and we kind of are pushing this?
It's really because Shoreline was the one that saw the need and how this would really benefit the region, and we were willing to take it on.
It wasn't important, I mean, frankly, I would say it wasn't important enough for Seattle.
Seattle
Seattle wouldn't
didn't.
have, they have other priorities and
They
they
don't care about
wouldn't
North
have managed the project.
Yeah, and it really started because of the, inadequate sidewalks. Anybody that's been down there, you can see how awful they are. There's power poles in the middle of the sidewalk. They have signs posted on the Seattle side that clearly say not accessible. Like, how does that work in today's,
In particular, when you've got a new light rail station,
and
we're
then you've got a
trying to encourage people to get to.
right? And Shoreline is the ones that had upzoned and was looking for redevelopment in those station areas. So what, would we really want to upzone those station areas and then have a really substandard, inadequate sidewalk to get people to the light rail? That just didn't align with the city's vision, and so the city was willing to take it on. At one point, our goal was that we were going to take design to 60%, and then at least for the interchange, and then hand it off to WashDOT, because WashDOT really should be responsible for doing that interchange, and they're designed to build, projects like that. But they didn't have the resources or the capacity, so it got left to us. But it was important enough to us as the city to really have that regional impact that we kept it and we're delivering it.
It's pretty amazing. I drive Aurora to 140 to the freeway almost every day. And I know the trees are devastated, but watching the amount of dirt, it's
Yeah.
an amazing
Yeah,
process.
yeah. When you think about it, those roundabouts have to sit on a more level surface. And if you imagine back the way it was before all this work, there was kind of hills. And so it has required quite a lot, and there's going to be some retaining walls on the side in order to get those roundabouts in. I think roundabouts are an incredible transportation solution, but they're costly and they require more property, which does often mean trees, or more acquisition of property around them. And so, there's been a lot of earth moving, and there were utilities in the ground there that have now had to be put down like this.
Yeah, I think the grade cut at the highest point has been like 10 feet. So that's why we've hit a lot. I won't say we haven't physically hit, but we unearthed, in order to drop the grade by 10 feet, that's where a lot of those utilities live, is in that space. So it's been a lot of work. I'm glad you've noticed it and you've seen it. It is pretty transformational when you think about it. And I recognize it's really a tough place to drive through with construction. So people being patient, or I recently had some friends be like, what is going on? And they live like in Kenmore, and they're like, what is happening? I was like, just don't use it. Like, take Lake City Way, take Ballinger to get to where they're at. I was like, just don't use it. It's going to be that way for a while. So find another route.
I just want to thank the city of Shoreline for the well-done signage for that project. That road closed, turn around, go back, don't go this way.
Yeah.
Because the city of Seattle did a really poor job on their side, and I see a lot of that on social media. I feel really sorry for those.
Yeah. The signage is an interesting thing. We try to do as much as we can, and we work with our contractors, because sometimes some of those decisions about where traffic's going to flow are made after the contract has been awarded. They need to do it. WashDOT is interesting because WashDOT doesn't want to put signs, they don't want to have distractions for our drivers, but in the coming 6 months, you're going to see a lot of impacts primarily for people heading northbound because of 130th, and we're going to see more changes at 145th too, at that off ramp at 145th. And so we work with the WashDOT for anything that's going to have potential to impact I-5. But we can't put a lot of signs along I-5 about that. The other thing, I could talk forever about this. I love this stuff. That a lot of people don't understand is we're limited about how we can hire contractors to build our projects. For the most part, not completely, but for the most part, we are required to use a low bid construction process, which means we have to get something completely designed and put a package of documents with plans in it out to bid, and then we are required by state law to then award that contract to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. That's not, in my opinion, and based on my years of experience, it's not really the best way to have a collaborative outcome when it comes to building construction projects, but we do the best we can with that situation. In the case of our project on 45th, we've got a low bidder that was lower than, I think it might have been a little bit higher than our engineer's estimate, but considerably lower than the other bidders, but it's a very good contractor. And so we're very fortunate. It's hard enough to deliver these projects. And oftentimes, communication with contractors can be challenging. They might not fully understand what we're asking them to do. In the case of this project, we've got a very good contractor, so we've got another year to go to get through, and just tell your friends to not drive through there for a while, but then invite them all back when the roundabouts are done.
All right. We are just about 12 minutes over because we've had excellent questions and great discussion back and forth. So thank you all so much for the extra time and for the great questions that you've raised this evening. And for our Zoom folks, we will make sure that you have access to this recording in addition to the general public on the CityLearn website. Thank you for being here and for staying late with us. We appreciate you and your questions. And thank you so much to Tricia, Liz, and Leif for your presentation tonight. A lot of content, deep dive, but still a 101 level. So we appreciate you.
Hope it's been helpful. We
Yeah.
love talking
Yes.
about this stuff. Hope it's been helpful to you.
All right. Thank you so much and have a great evening.